Hey everybody, this is Zachary Jeans, and let's keep walking through our Bible. So we are starting the Gospel of Luke, and we're going to be reading verse 1 through 25 of chapter 1. Today is day 61, and I just want to thank you so much for joining in on this journey. I am reading out of the English Standard Version. It's a pretty good translation, pretty literal. You're welcome to read along in whatever translation you want. There's always a link in the description to a online version of this. So you can always do that. Always appreciate it if you like the video, whatever, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or whatever. And you can always reshare it. That really does a small thing to share the word out in the world, and it gives other people who didn't know this existed an opportunity to see it. So today's a great day to do that with Luke. Why don't we get started? But let's have some prayer, because God's the one who opens up our eyes and our hearts and our ears to see and hear and all that. Lord, I love you. Sometimes it's good to just stop and restart with you. I just had to do that with my modem and go through all those little tinkering processes to get it going, Lord. And I just want to stop and just get started fresh with you. God, thank you for Luke. God, thank you that he wrote all this down and that you gave him so much clarity and all the people he talked to. God, we just ask that you'd open up our eyes and our ears and our hearts. We ask that in your name, Jesus. Amen. So, Luke chapter 1. Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you may have certainty concerning the things that you have been taught. Sometimes we can get caught up in, what does God want me to do? And all of this. And I love that one of our Gospels was written based on, it seemed good for me to do. It seemed good. So I did it. So if something seems good, it lines up with the Lord, seems good for you to do it. Right? It's like, don't overthink it. In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah, and he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. But they had no child because Elizabeth was barren. Both were advanced in years. They were old people. They had walked their talk. Were they sinless? No. Okay, that's not what Luke's after. This is where we get into overanalyzing and applying our patterns of, well, if this, then that, to this stuff. And Luke's assuming that you won't make those dumb mistakes, actually. He's assuming that you're going to just ease up a bit and just listen to what he's saying. So they were older folks. They didn't have kids. They'd walked the walk, didn't commit any of the big sin stuff. Okay. Now, while he was serving as priest before God, when his division was on duty, according to the custom of the priesthood, he was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And the whole multitude of the people were praying outside at the hour of incense. And there appeared to him an angel of the Lord, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And Zechariah was troubled when he saw him, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said to him, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard. Your wife, Elizabeth, will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. For he will be great before the Lord, and he must not drink wine or strong drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready for the Lord a people prepared." So Zechariah is one of the very few totally random, chosen by rolling the dice, if you will, to go into the temple and do the special thing during the time that his order, his group, it was their turn to serve. And he's in there, and he's had this prayer that he's been offering to the Lord, in addition probably to those who were, offering on behalf of Israel. And the angel here, Gabriel, likely, unless it just said that and I'm a dummy. Yeah. It doesn't say Gabriel, but I believe that's Gabriel. And Zechariah's freaked out because he's there and he's answering his prayer. They're going to have a baby when they shouldn't be able to have a baby. And if any of the women in our group have gone through menopause, this is probably what Elizabeth has gone through. And there shouldn't be a way for her to have a kid. And she has a miraculous baby. So we're going to also pair that against Mary, who's very young and hasn't had sexual relations with a man, i.e. Joseph, and she's going to have a baby. So we have two miracle kids, and they're also cousins, which is kind of cool. Zechariah said to the angel, "How shall I know this, for I'm an old man?" See, I knew it was coming. I have it in my head. "For my wife is advanced in years." And the angel answered him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. And behold, you will be silent and unable to speak until the day that these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time." And the people were waiting for Zechariah, and they were wondering at his delay in the temple. And when he came out, he was unable to speak to them. And they realized that he had seen a vision in the temple. And he kept making signs to them and remained mute. And when his time of service was ended, he went to his home. After these days, his wife Elizabeth conceived. And for 5 months she kept herself hidden, saying, "Thus the Lord has done for me in the days when he looked on me, to take away my reproach among the people." Yeah, I had the Gabriel thing in my head from this passage, and I just hadn't read it out loud yet. So anyway, yeah, Gabriel, right hand of God, basically doing all his hardcore work along with Michael, the archangel, and some others, got special business. But isn't it interesting, after all this faith that Zechariah shows to the Lord, and how the Lord does this miraculous thing and sends an angel to the altar of incense inside the temple and talks to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't see how that can happen." Instead, he should have pulled off the whole thing that Mary gives the Lord and do the whole, I don't know, how can this be? But be it to me as the Lord wills and all that. I think, had Zechariah turned that direction, like, I don't know, but I know that whatever the Lord does, the Lord does. Like, if he would have taken that attitude, he could have still shown a little, like, I don't know how this is going to happen. But the clear message here is, if the Lord gets in your grill and gets up in your kitchen, if you will, and he's like, I am headed this direction with you in your life, it's best to just take him at his word and start walking that direction and go, okay, Lord, I believe you. I'm going to walk that way. I'm going to believe you. I don't know how this happens, but I'm walk that way. Right? And even Zechariah's mute nature that he goes through, his silencing, God eventually even uses that. God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him, are called according to his purpose, Romans says. And he's going to use even his silence, right? When he, does the whole announcement of John. And isn't it also interesting that John here in Luke's gospel, he makes it a point to make sure that people understand he's coming in the power, he's coming in the authority, he's coming in the ministry of Elijah. And so when people ask, they're always wondering if Jesus was Elijah, or maybe John the Baptist was Elijah. And he's like, no, I'm John. But his ministry was the ministry of Elijah, as prophesied that it would happen. So that's also an interesting point. But I guess the last thing I'd say is, if you listen to Elizabeth and what she has to say there at the end, this is something that I can't understand because I'm not a woman and I didn't have a kid, and I also didn't struggle having a kid myself. We've had one child. We weren't ever able to ever have another child, and I know that that is a challenging thing. I know that there are lots of women in my sphere, my extra sphere of relationships, have shared publicly that they never had kids. In that deep, like, heart-crushing desire to have a child or have another child and not be able to. I know from the outside, but you know what that feels like, and maybe you can identify and just sit for a minute and feel things about what Elizabeth is saying there that I can't. I mean, I'm on the outside. I can't feel it like you can if you're a woman who's wanted to have another child or have a child and have not been able to. And it's okay to feel those things and to also identify and just think through how she spent 5 months not basically telling anybody, because she's like, I don't want this to be like another cause for people to think that there's judgment on me. And maybe she had been pregnant a number of times, but she wasn't able to bring to term. See, that's the other thing. We just assume that she never even was pregnant, right? But maybe she was. And every time she miscarried, everybody sort of side-eyed, kind of like, well, looks like the Lord's judging her. Small village, no internet. Everybody talks about everybody. So she hides away for 5 months until she knows, like, I think this one's going to make it. Anyway. Appreciate you going through this book. 365 days. Let's keep walking. Till next time. God bless. Bye-bye.